My parents refused to watch over my sick child because I'm Helena, 34 years old, and a single mother to my wonderful 6-year-old son Ethan, who has asthma. I work as a marketing executive at a competitive firm, and recently a big promotion opportunity came up requiring a weekend meeting. When Ethan fell sick, I desperately needed my parents' help for childcare. They refused, saying they weren't willing to sacrifice their weekend plans. I missed the crucial meeting, lost my promotion opportunity, and confronted them about their selfishness. Then they started demanding financial support from me. I finally cut contact. Now they're calling me in tears. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from. If this resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I stood my ground against family members who only take but never give. I grew up in suburban Chicago with what I thought were supportive middle-class parents, James and Martha. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed, but as a child, they seemed like normal, caring parents. They helped me with school projects, attended my orchestra concerts, and celebrated my achievements. My father worked as an accountant while my mother taught elementary school. They weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. I was always the responsible one. I studied hard, graduated with honors, and went on to earn my marketing degree from the University of Illinois. My parents seemed proud of me, then always bragging to their friends about my accomplishments. They helped with tuition when they could, though I worked part-time throughout college to minimize student loans. After graduation, I landed a job at a small marketing agency in Chicago. The pay wasn't great, but it was a foot in the door. I worked long hours, took on extra projects, and steadily built my reputation in the industry. By 27, I had moved to a mid-size firm with better opportunities and pay. That's when I met Andrew. He was charming, ambitious, and worked in finance. We met at a charity event and he swept me off my feet. For the first year, everything was perfect. We moved in together, talked about future plans, and I genuinely thought he was the one. When I discovered I was pregnant, it was unplanned but not unwelcome. Andrew seemed excited too at first, but as my pregnancy progressed, things changed. Andrew became distant, worked later, and spent less time at home. When I was 7 months pregnant, I came home to find a note. He had accepted a job in Seattle and didn't want the responsibility of a family. Just like that, he was gone. The next time I heard from him was through his lawyer offering a minimal child support arrangement in exchange for me not pursuing more. Being pregnant, emotional, and overwhelmed, I accepted the terms, a decision I sometimes regret. When Ethan was born, he was perfect. Those first few months were a blur of exhaustion, joy, and adjustment. My parents helped, occasionally coming over for an afternoon or watching him for a few hours while I went to interviews. But their help always came with commentary. "This wouldn't be so hard if you had chosen better," my mother would say. Or, "Single motherhood was your choice," from my father. I found a new position at Market Force Solutions when Ethan was 6 months old. The company offered good health insurance and reasonable hours, both crucial for a single parent. My manager, David, was understanding about my situation, and I was grateful for the flexibility. I arranged for daycare near the office, created an efficient routine, and somehow made it work day by day. When Ethan was 3, he was diagnosed with asthma after a frightening episode that landed us in the emergency room. The diagnosis meant additional medical appointments, medications, and vigilance. The medical bills strained my already tight budget, but Ethan's health was my priority. I applied for assistance programs and picked up freelance projects on the side to make ends meet. Through all this, my parents' help remained minimal and conditional. They would watch Ethan occasionally, but only when it was convenient for them. My requests were met with sighs and reminders of their busy retirement schedule. Meanwhile, they seemed to have endless time and resources for my brother Jacob and his family in the suburbs. Despite these challenges, I was making progress at work. After 4 years at Market Force, I had established myself as a valuable team member. David had hinted that I was being considered for the senior marketing director position when the current director retired in a few months. The promotion would mean a 30% increase in salary, better health insurance options, and possibly enough financial stability to move to a neighborhood with better schools for Ethan. My colleague Sarah became my closest friend at work and biggest advocate. She had children a few years older than Ethan and understood the balancing act of working motherhood. "You deserve this promotion, Helena. she would assure me. You've earned it with your work, not just your time. The opportunity came sooner than expected. David called me into his office on a Wednesday afternoon. Helena Bill Parker is retiring at the end of the month instead of June, he said. We're accelerating the timeline for his replacement. There's a meeting this Saturday with our potential new client Nexus Technologies. Their executives are only in town this weekend, and they specifically requested presentations from the senior team and top candidates for the director position. My heart raced with excitement and anxiety. This was the chance I had been working toward, but weekend meetings were always a childcare challenge. I'll be there, I assured him. What time on Saturday? 9 to 4, potentially longer if the discussions go well, David replied. This is a multi-million-dollar opportunity. The executives who impress at this meeting will be in strong consideration for the director position. I nodded confidently, already mentally running through my childcare options. My regular sitter was visiting family that weekend. Sarah was taking her kids to her mother's in Wisconsin. My neighbors had their own weekend plans. But my parents were always my backup option for important work events. Surely they would understand how crucial this was. As I left David's office, Sarah caught my expression and gave me a thumbs up. This is it, she whispered. Your moment. I allowed myself to imagine what the promotion would mean. Better health care for Ethan's asthma. A more reliable car. Maybe even saving for his college fund instead of just surviving month to month. For the first time in years, I felt hopeful about our future. If only I had known how quickly that hope would be crushed. The first signs of trouble started Thursday night. Ethan came home from school with a slight wheeze. I gave him his medication and monitored him closely, hoping it was just the spring pollen triggering a mild reaction. By bedtime, his breathing seemed better, and I thought we had avoided an episode. But at 3 in the morning, I woke to the sound of Ethan coughing. His breathing was labored and his forehead felt warm against my palm. I gave him his rescue inhaler and sat with him propped against pillows to ease his breathing. By morning, his condition hadn't improved. I called into work explaining I would be late and got an emergency appointment with his pediatrician. Dr. Williams examined Ethan carefully, listening to his lungs and checking his oxygen levels. It's definitely an asthma flare-up, she confirmed. Likely triggered by the respiratory virus going around his school. He's not at emergency levels, but he needs close monitoring, rest, and increased medication for the next 48 to 72 hours. My stomach tightened. I have a crucial work meeting tomorrow that could lead to a promotion. Is there any way he could be well enough by then? Dr. Williams gave me a sympathetic but firm look. I wouldn't count on it, Helena. These flare-ups typically take several days to resolve, and stress or excitement could make it worse. He needs calm rest and someone watching him closely for any signs of worsening. I nodded, trying to hide my disappointment. As we left the doctor's office, I called my parents. It was time to cash in on all those favors I had done for them over the years. Mom, I need your help, I said when she answered. Ethan has an asthma flare-up, and I have a critical work meeting tomorrow that could lead to a promotion. Could you and Dad watch him for the day? It would be about 8 hours. There was a pause, then my mother's hesitant voice. Oh, Helena, tomorrow isn't good. Your father has his golf tournament, and I'm scheduled for a spa day with the ladies from church. We've had these plans for weeks. Mom, this is important, I pressed. This promotion would mean an extra $20,000 a year, better health care for Ethan, maybe even a move to a better school district. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't crucial. I understand, dear, but we've earned our retirement. We've been looking forward to this weekend. Can't you find someone else? What about that nice neighbor lady? I've tried everyone, I said, frustration building. Sarah's out of town, my sitter's unavailable, and my neighbors have plans. You're my last option. Well, I just don't see how we can help. Your father has been practicing for this tournament for months, and I've already paid for my spa package. Non-refundable, you know. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm as Ethan watched me from the back seat. Mom, I've helped you with everything you've asked for. I set up your new phones, fixed your computer, drove you to appointments when Dad couldn't. I'm asking for one day of help for something that could change our lives. That's different, Helena. Those were quick little favors. This is an entire Saturday. We have our own lives, you know. The conversation ended without resolution. I promised to call back that evening after talking to my boss about options. As I hung up, Ethan's small voice came from the back seat. Are you okay, Mommy? You look sad. I forced a smile into the rearview mirror. I'm fine, sweetie. Just trying to figure some things out. Let's get you home and comfortable. The rest of the day was spent caring for Ethan while frantically making calls between his naps. I explained the situation to David, who was sympathetic but firm. I understand family emergencies, Helena, but this meeting is crucial. The Nexus executives won't be back in town for months. If there's any way you can make it work, you should. By evening, Ethan's fever had risen and his breathing was more labored. I gave him his medication and called my parents again, this time more desperate. Dad, I really need your help tomorrow, I pleaded when my father answered. Ethan's condition has worsened and this meeting is critical for my career. Could you and Mom reconsider? My father's voice was cold and dismissive. Helena, we've discussed this. We're not willing to sacrifice our weekend for your career choices. You decided to be a single mother, and these are the consequences. We've raised our children already. The words stung like a physical blow. But you help Jacob with his kids all the time, I countered, referring to my brother whose wife stayed home with their children. That's different. Jacob and Amy have a proper family setup. Besides, they don't ask last minute. This isn't last minute by choice. Ethan got sick unexpectedly. That's what kids do. Well, perhaps if you had chosen better, you'd have a partner to help with these situations, he said dismissively. My mother got on the extension then, her voice placating but ultimately unhelpful. Helena dear, we're sorry about Ethan, but your father's right. We can't just drop everything whenever your life gets complicated. Maybe this is a sign you should reconsider your priorities. I hung up, hands shaking with anger and disbelief. As the reality sank in that I would miss the meeting, I felt a wave of helplessness. The inequality in how my parents treated me versus my brother had always been there, but never so blatantly cruel. That night, as Ethan's fever spiked and his breathing worsened, I sat beside his bed, alternating between monitoring his symptoms and fighting back tears of frustration. By morning, it was clear he needed my full attention. I sent David a final email explaining I couldn't attend the meeting due to my son's medical emergency. His reply was brief and clearly disappointed. Understood. We'll manage without you. Those 4 words felt like the door closing on my opportunity, all because my parents weren't willing to sacrifice a golf game and spa day to help their grandson and daughter in a genuine time of need. The weekend passed in a blur of medication schedules, temperature checks, and nebulizer treatments. Ethan's condition improved slowly, but my worries about work only grew. Every time my phone buzzed with an email notification, my stomach tightened, expecting news about the meeting and my missed opportunity. Monday morning, I dropped a recovered but still tired Ethan at school with extra instructions for his teacher about his medication. When I arrived at the office, the buzz about the weekend meeting was everywhere. People gathered in small groups discussing how well it had gone and the potential size of the Nexus contract. Sarah found me at my desk, her expression sympathetic. How's Ethan doing? Better, I said, trying to sound upbeat. His fever broke Saturday night and his breathing is almost back to normal. She lowered her voice. The meeting went really well. David was looking for you, seemed disappointed you weren't there. Before I could respond, David appeared at my cubicle. Helena, can I see you in my office? The walk to his office felt like the longest of my life. Once inside, he closed the door and gestured for me to sit. First, how's your son? He asked. Much better, thank you. It was definitely the right call to stay home with him, medically speaking. David nodded, his expression softening slightly before turning professional again. I understand family emergencies happen, but I need to be direct with you. The Nexus meeting was a success, and they were impressed with our team. Derek stepped in to present the campaign ideas you and he had been working on. My heart sank. Derek was competent, but had joined the company 2 years after me. He had no children and regularly boasted about his availability for last-minute projects and weekend work. The thing is, Helena, David continued, team players show up for crucial moments. This was one of those moments. The executive team noticed your absence, especially since they'd been told you were a top candidate for the director position. I understand, I said quietly, but my son was sick with a serious asthma flare-up. I tried everything to find alternative care. I don't doubt that, David said. And I'm not questioning your dedication to your job. Your work has always been excellent. But availability and reliability are also factors in leadership positions. I knew what was coming before he said it. We've decided to offer the senior marketing director position to Derek. He demonstrated his commitment this weekend and the executives connected well with him. The words hit me like a physical blow. All the late nights, the extra projects, the quality work I'd consistently delivered despite my challenging home situation, none of it mattered because I'd missed one meeting due to my child's illness. I understand, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the emotion churning inside me. Thank you for considering me. David looked uncomfortable. You're still a valued member of the team, Helena. There will be other opportunities. But we both knew the reality. Senior positions rarely opened up, and I had just watched my best chance at financial stability slip away because my parents refused to help for one day. The rest of the day passed in a fog. Colleagues offered awkward congratulations to Derek, who had the decency to look somewhat embarrassed around me. Sarah took me to lunch, letting me vent my frustration and disappointment. The worst part, I confided, is that the salary increase would have covered better health care for Ethan. His specialist isn't fully covered under our current plan. Your parents really couldn't help for one day? Sarah asked incredulously. They weren't willing to sacrifice their weekend. I repeated my father's words bitterly. Their golf tournament and spa day were more important than their grandson's health and my career. That evening, after putting Ethan to bed, I called my parents. The anger and hurt I'd been suppressing all day bubbled to the surface as soon as my father answered. I didn't get the promotion, I said without preamble, because I couldn't attend the meeting, because you and Mom refused to help with Ethan. Now, Helena, my father began in his patronizing tone, you can't blame us for your work issues. We had prior commitments. Prior commitments, I repeated incredulously. Your grandson was sick, and I needed help for one day. One day that could have changed our financial situation significantly. Do you know what that promotion would have meant for us? Better health care for Ethan's asthma. A more reliable car. Maybe even a better apartment in a neighborhood with cleaner air that wouldn't trigger his attacks as often. You chose to be a single mother, my father said, his go-to phrase whenever I needed help. These are the realities of the choice you made. I didn't choose for Andrew to abandon us, I shot back. And you know what I've never complained about being Ethan's mother. I love him more than anything. What I'm complaining about is your selective availability. You're always there for Jacob and his kids. That's different, my mother chimed in. Jacob and Amy plan ahead. Ethan's asthma attack wasn't planned, Mom. That's the point. Kids get sick unexpectedly. Family is supposed to help family in emergencies. We've helped you plenty over the years, my father countered. And I've helped you constantly, I reminded them. Who set up your new smart TV? Who taught you how to use your phones and computer? Who drives you to appointments when your car is in the shop? Who helped clean out the garage last month? We could get anyone to help with that, my father dismissed. Those are just little favors. Little favors that add up to hours and hours of my time, I said. Time I could have spent with Ethan or advancing my career, but I helped because that's what family does. The conversation deteriorated from there, with my parents minimizing their dependence on me while maximizing their perception of help they'd provided. By the time we hung up, nothing was resolved and I felt worse than before. After the call, I sat on my small balcony, letting the tears flow freely now that there was no one to see them. The unfairness of it all crashed over me in waves. I had always been the responsible one, the one who did everything right, who helped whenever asked. And yet the one time I truly needed their help, they refused. Later that night, as I checked on Ethan one last time before bed, he stirred and looked up at me with his innocent eyes. Mommy, why were you crying earlier? I hadn't realized he'd heard me. Sitting on the edge of his bed, I stroked his hair gently. Sometimes grown-ups get sad too, buddy. But I'm okay now. Was it because I was sick and you couldn't go to your meeting? He asked, surprising me with his perceptiveness. No, sweetheart, I assured him, though it wasn't entirely true. It was because sometimes people don't treat each other very nicely, and that makes me sad. Like when Mason doesn't share at school? I smiled at his simple comparison. Something like that. But don't worry about me. I'm tough, remember? He nodded solemnly. You're the toughest mommy. That simple faith from my 6-year-old gave me strength. No matter what opportunities I'd lost, Ethan was worth every sacrifice. But I was beginning to realize that not everyone in my life valued me the same way. The week following the promotion announcement was difficult. David was professionally cordial but distinctly cooler toward me. Derek attempted awkward conversations that neither of us knew how to navigate. Only Sarah provided genuine support, inviting Ethan and me over for dinner midweek to take one thing off my plate. At home, I ran financial calculations late into the night after Ethan was asleep. Without the promotion, our budget would remain tight. Ethan's medications and specialist visits consumed a significant portion of my income. The better school district I'd been researching would remain out of reach, as would the safer apartment building with better air filtration systems that would help with his asthma. Midweek, my parents called as if nothing had happened, asking about Ethan's health and chatting about neighborhood gossip. I gave short, polite responses, the emotional distance between us growing with every superficial exchange. They didn't mention the weekend or my missed opportunity, and neither did I. But something fundamental had shifted in our relationship, a crack that would soon become a chasm. 2 weeks after the incident, my phone rang on a Thursday evening. My father's name flashed on the screen, and I answered with a neutral, "Hello." "Helena, we need your help on Saturday," he said without preamble. "We bought a new television and we can't figure out how to set it up with all those streaming services you got us last time." I hesitated, the irony of them asking for weekend help not lost on me, but some part of me still hoped for acknowledgement, for some recognition of the harm they'd caused. "What time on Saturday?" "Morning would be best. We're having friends over in the evening to watch the game." "I'll come by around 10. I agreed, mentally rearranging my weekend plans with Ethan. Saturday morning, Ethan and I arrived at my parents' suburban home. Their house was the same one I'd grown up in, a comfortable 4-bedroom with a well-maintained lawn and garden that my mother took pride in. I'd always felt a sense of coming home when I visited, but today the feeling was absent, replaced by a vague unease. My mother answered the door with a bright smile for Ethan, but barely a glance at me. "There's my favorite grandson. Come in, I made those chocolate chip cookies you like." While Ethan was distracted with cookies and cartoons, I joined my father in the living room where the new television was still in its box. "It's one of those smart TVs," he explained. "The salesman said it has all the apps built in, but we need help setting up our accounts." As I unpacked the television, my parents settled on the couch, engrossed in conversation about their upcoming plans. "The cruise cabin upgrade was definitely worth the extra $3,000, my father was saying. "Marjorie and Phil said the balcony views are spectacular in the Southern Caribbean." I froze the television remote in my hand. $3,000 for a cabin upgrade. More than enough to have hired a professional nurse for Ethan for the day I needed help. The realization hit me like a physical blow. "When's the cruise?" I asked, keeping my voice carefully neutral. "Next month," my mother replied enthusiastically. 15 days through the Caribbean. We're so excited, it's our 3rd cruise this year." I nodded, focusing on setting up the TV to avoid showing my growing resentment. Their retirement was comfortable thanks to my father's pension and their wise investments, which was their right after decades of work. But the contrast between their willingness to spend thousands on leisure while refusing to help their daughter and grandson in a critical moment was stark and painful. As I worked through the setup process, my mother hovered nearby, adding requests. "After you finish with the TV, could you look at my computer? It's running slow again, and your father mentioned the gutters need cleaning before we leave for the cruise. You could do that today too, right?" The casual assumption that I would spend my entire Saturday doing their chores after they had refused to give me a single day of help made something shift inside me. Still, I nodded silently, completing the TV setup with mechanical efficiency. My father tested the new system, nodding with approval. "Looks good. Now there's one other thing. We're a bit short on our property tax payment this quarter, about $500. We were hoping you could help us out." That was the breaking point. $500 when they had just spent $3,000 on a cruise cabin upgrade. $500 when I was struggling to afford Ethan's asthma medication after missing out on a promotion that would have eased our financial strain. "Let me get this straight." I said, my voice dangerously calm. You spent $3,000 extra on a cruise cabin, but you need me to give you $500 for property taxes. My father looked surprised at my tone. It's just temporary. We'll pay you back after the cruise. Like you paid me back for the plane tickets I bought you last Christmas, or the new washer and dryer I helped you purchase when yours broke. Those loans had never been repaid, always forgotten or dismissed as family helping family. Now, Helena, my mother interjected, after all we've done, raising you, a little financial help now and then isn't too much to ask. What about when I needed your help? When Ethan was sick and I needed one day of childcare for a meeting that could have improved our lives significantly? You weren't willing to sacrifice your golf game and spa day then. That's different, my father said dismissively. We had plans. And I had a sick child and a career opportunity that you knew was important to us, I countered. Do you know what that promotion would have meant? A 30% salary increase, better healthcare coverage for Ethan's specialists, maybe even a move to a better school district. You chose single motherhood, my father said, his favorite refrain. That's not our problem. I didn't choose for Andrew to leave, I said, anger rising. But even if I had Ethan as your grandson, doesn't that mean anything to you? Of course it does, my mother said, glancing toward the kitchen where Ethan was still occupied. But you can't expect us to rearrange our lives constantly because of your situation. Constantly, I've asked for your help maybe 5 times in the past year, usually for a few hours at most. Meanwhile, you call me for help weekly, setting up technology, running errands, fixing things around the house. I always say yes, even when it's inconvenient, because I thought that's what family does. That's different, my father insisted. Those are quick little tasks. That add up to hours and hours of my time. Time I could spend with my son or advancing my career. But I help because I care about you. I just thought the feeling was mutual. The argument escalated, years of unequal treatment between me and my brother finally being aired. My brother Jacob had always received more support, more understanding, more grace than I had even before I became a single mother. Jacob has a proper family, my father said, his tone condescending. He and Amy are doing things the right way. So because I'm a single mother, I deserve less support. Ethan deserves less love from his grandparents. Your poor life decisions regarding Ethan's father aren't our fault, my mother added, her words cutting deep. We warned you about Andrew from the beginning. That was the final straw. I stood up, hands shaking with anger. I won't be your unpaid help anymore. Not when you can't be bothered to help us when we truly need it. My father's face hardened. If that's your attitude, don't expect us to continue the birthday and Christmas gifts for Ethan. And that college fund we mentioned starting for him, you can forget about that too. I stared at them, these people who had raised me but now seemed like strangers. Using your grandson as leverage. Nice. I called for Ethan, who came running from the kitchen, cookie crumbs on his face. We're leaving, buddy. But we just got here, he protested. I know, but we need to go. Say goodbye to Grandma and Grandpa. As we walked to the car, my mother followed us to the door. Helena, you're being dramatic. Call us when you've calmed down. I didn't respond, helping Ethan into his car seat and driving away with tears threatening to spill over. The final image of my parents standing in their doorway, looking more annoyed than hurt, told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in their priorities. The drive home from my parents' house was silent, except for Ethan's occasional questions about why we left so suddenly. I gave him simple, age-appropriate answers without burdening him with adult conflicts. Once home, I sent him to play in his room while I called Sarah, needing a friendly voice. They did what? Sarah exclaimed after I recounted the confrontation. Asked you for money right after showing off their expensive cruise. That's some next-level entitlement. I've been their personal tech support errand runner and handywoman for years. I said, the realization settling in. But when I needed them for one day, one important day, they couldn't be bothered. It's time to establish some serious boundaries, Sarah advised. You don't owe them your time and energy, especially when the relationship is this one-sided. We talked for nearly an hour, Sarah offering practical advice about setting limits and managing the inevitable guilt. By the time we hung up, I had a clearer perspective and a tentative plan forward. The following Monday, I made an appointment with a financial advisor through my bank's free consultation service. Sandra, the advisor, reviewed my budget and financial situation with professional objectivity. "You're actually managing quite well given the circumstances," she said, examining my spreadsheets. "But you're right that there's little room for extras or emergencies." Together, we created a new budget that didn't account for any potential gifts from my parents. I had always factored in their contributions to Ethan's birthday and Christmas presents, as well as occasional help with larger purchases. Removing those assumptions made things tighter, but more realistic. "Have you looked into after-school programs with sliding scale fees?" Sandra suggested. "Some offer financial assistance for children with medical needs like asthma." I hadn't considered this option, assuming such programs would be beyond my budget. Sandra provided a list of local resources to investigate, including a few specifically for families dealing with chronic childhood illnesses. That evening, while researching the programs, I discovered a local support group for single parents. Their website mentioned weekly meetings with childcare-provided workshops on financial management, and even an emergency childcare network for members. I immediately signed up for their next meeting. The support group proved to be a revelation. Sitting in a circle with 15 other single parents sharing stories of similar struggles and triumphs, I felt understood in a way I hadn't in years. They didn't judge my situation or imply I had made poor choices. They simply offered practical support and genuine empathy. "Family disappointment is one of the hardest things to deal with," said Melissa, the group facilitator, after I shared my experience. "We often expect the most support from those closest to us, and when it doesn't come, the rejection cuts deep." Others shared similar experiences with unsupportive family members, offering strategies they had used to cope and create new support networks. By the end of the meeting, I had exchanged phone numbers with 3 other mothers and signed up for the emergency childcare rotation, both to receive and provide help when needed. A week after the confrontation with my parents, I finally called my brother Jacob. Our relationship had become distant over the years, partly due to his busy family life, and partly due to the obvious disparity in how our parents treated us. But I needed to hear his perspective. "Mom and Dad have always helped us out," Jacob confirmed when I described the situation. "They watch the kids most weekends, actually. I had no idea they were refusing to help you." "They've never been reliable for me," I explained. "Even before Ethan, but especially since. They always have excuses." Jacob was quiet for a moment. "I never realized how different their treatment was." "That's not fair, Helena. Ethan is their grandson just like my kids are their grandchildren." His acknowledgement was healing in a way I hadn't expected. "Would you be willing to help occasionally?" I asked hesitantly. "Not regularly, but in true emergencies, I'd do the same for you, of course." "Of course," Jacob agreed immediately. "Amy and I would be happy to. The cousins should spend more time together anyway." That conversation bridged a gap between us that had been growing for years. Jacob promised to speak to our parents about their behavior, though I had little hope it would change their perspectives. At home, I set up my phone to automatically decline calls from my parents. I wasn't ready to speak with them, still processing the hurt and betrayal. Instead, I focused on work on Ethan and on building our new support network through the single parents group. 2 weeks passed without contact. I was just beginning to feel a sense of peace with my decision when my parents showed up unannounced at my apartment on a Sunday afternoon. "Helena, open the door," my father demanded after knocking loudly. "We know you're in there. Your car is in the parking lot." I stood on the other side, Ethan looking up at me with confusion. "Go to your room, sweetie," I said quietly. "I need to talk to Grandma and Grandpa alone." Once he was out of earshot, I spoke through the door. "I'm not ready to talk to you yet. Please leave." "This is ridiculous," my mother's voice came through. "We're your parents. You can't just cut us off like this." "I can, and I am," I replied firmly. "I need space to think about what kind of relationship is healthy for Ethan and me going forward." "We need to talk to you about something important," my father insisted. "It's about money." Of course it was. "Whatever it is, the answer is no. I won't be giving you any money." "We need $2,000 for home repairs," my father continued as if I hadn't spoken. "The roof is leaking and our homeowner's insurance won't cover it all." "No," I said simply. "I don't have $2,000 to give you, and even if I did, I wouldn't. Not after how you treated us." Their demands became louder, causing neighbors to peek out of their apartments. The situation was becoming embarrassing and potentially frightening for Ethan. "If you don't leave now, I'll call building security," I warned. "And if you continue to harass us, I'll consider legal options." "Legal options," my father scoffed. "Against your own parents, we raised you better than this." "Actually, you taught me to stand up for myself," I countered. "I'm finally doing it." The most disturbing moment came when my mother threatened to call Child Protective Services, claiming my apartment wasn't adequate for a child with asthma. "We're concerned about Ethan's welfare," she said loud enough for neighbors to hear. "This building has mold issues." That was a complete fabrication, but the threat sent a chill through me. I immediately began recording their threats on my phone in case I needed evidence later. After they finally left, I sat shaking on my couch, the reality of their behavior sinking in. They were willing to use my child as a weapon to potentially put our family unit at risk, all because I refused to continue being their on-call helper and ATM. The next day, I consulted with a family attorney recommended by someone in my support group. The initial consultation was free, and her advice was reassuring. "Based on what you've described, you have nothing to worry about from CPS," she assured me. "Your apartment is safe, Ethan is well cared for, and you have documentation of his medical care. However, I recommend documenting all interactions with your parents going forward just in case." She also advised me about grandparents' rights in our state, which were limited when a parent was deemed fit, and there was no pre-existing custodial relationship. "They have no legal right to see Ethan if you choose to restrict access," she explained. "Though for his emotional well-being, some form of relationship might be beneficial long-term if it can be made healthy." That evening, I made a decision that would dramatically change our lives. I began searching for a new apartment in a different neighborhood, one my parents didn't know about. The support group had connections to an apartment complex with a good reputation and reasonable rents, including some units specifically designed with air filtration systems for residents with respiratory issues. The decision to move was difficult financially, but necessary for our emotional well-being and safety. I couldn't risk more confrontations like the one at our door, especially with Ethan witnessing the hostility. Moving day arrived 3 weeks later, a bright Saturday in May. Sarah and 3 other friends from my support group helped load the rented truck with our belongings. Ethan was excited about the new apartment, especially after learning it had a small playground and several children his age in the building. "Why are we moving, Mommy?" Ethan asked as we drove to our new home. "Is it because Grandma and Grandpa were yelling at our door?" Children perceive more than we give them credit for. I chose my words carefully, wanting to be honest without burdening him with adult conflicts. "Partly yes, but mostly because our new apartment will be better for your asthma. Remember how the doctor said clean air is important? Our new place has special filters to keep the air clean." "But why were they so mad at you?" I sighed, pulling into the parking lot of our new building. Sometimes even adults don't know how to be kind to each other. Grandma and Grandpa were upset because I needed to make some changes in how we spend time together. "Will we still see them?" "Not for a while," I answered honestly. "We need some time apart to figure things out." Our new apartment was smaller but in a better school district. The building had better security, including a locked entrance and intercom system. Most importantly, it had the promised air filtration system that would help with Ethan's asthma. The rent was slightly higher, but I had calculated that the money saved on emergency room visits and medications might offset the difference. I deliberately didn't share our new address with my parents. I also changed my phone number, providing the new one only to trusted friends Jacob and necessary contacts like Ethan's school and my workplace. I informed Ethan's school about the restricted pickup authorization, specifying that only I and 2 trusted friends were authorized to collect him. The first week in our new place was peaceful. Ethan's breathing improved noticeably in the cleaner environment, and he made friends with 2 children in neighboring apartments. I felt a weight lifting, the constant tension of anticipating my parents' demands or criticisms fading day by day. Then came the social media incident. I had maintained minimal presence on social media platforms for years, mainly to stay connected with friends and share occasional photos of Ethan with family. I had forgotten about a comment a friend posted on an old photo mentioning our move and how nice the new neighborhood was. My parents discovered the post and immediately began sending messages through email, the only contact method they still had. The messages alternated between guilt trips and demands. How could you move without telling us we're your parents? We need your new address for emergency contacts. This is cruel to Ethan, keeping him from his grandparents. I responded briefly to the first email, stating simply that I needed space and would contact them when I was ready. To subsequent messages, I didn't respond at all. The situation escalated when my mother's sister, Aunt Susan, called. Somehow, my parents had gotten my new number from Jacob, though he swore he had only given it to them for absolute emergencies. "Helena, what is going on?" Aunt Susan demanded. "Your parents are devastated. They say you've cut them off completely and won't let them see Ethan." "Did they tell you why?" I asked calmly. "They said you had some disagreement about childcare, but that's no reason to cut off family." I took a deep breath and explained the full situation, including their refusal to help when Ethan was sick, the lost promotion opportunity, and their subsequent financial demands and threats. Aunt Susan was silent for a long moment. "I had no idea," she finally said. "They told everyone you were being unreasonable and ungrateful." "I'm setting boundaries, Aunt Susan. They've taken advantage of me for years while offering minimal support in return. The inequality between how they treat me versus Jacob has always been there, but this crossed a line I can't ignore." By the end of our conversation, Aunt Susan's tone had shifted from accusatory to understanding. "I won't pretend to fully understand your situation," she said. "But I know James and Martha can be difficult. Take the time you need." The family gathering I didn't attend became a dividing line in our extended family. According to Jacob, who called me afterward, our parents played the role of wounded, abandoned elders, generating sympathy from relatives who didn't know the full story. But when Jacob stood up and provided his perspective, questioning why they had always been available for his children, but not for Ethan, opinions began to shift. "It was uncomfortable," Jacob admitted, "but necessary. They shouldn't get to control the narrative when they're the ones who refused to help when you truly needed it." 3 months into our separation, I received a desperate email from my father claiming my mother had developed heart problems and needed my help with her care. The message was designed to trigger my sense of duty and guilt. "Your mother needs her daughter now. How can you abandon her when she's ill?" Instead of responding immediately, I reached out to a mutual friend who was a nurse at the hospital where my mother supposedly received care. She confirmed that while my mother had indeed visited the cardiologist, it was for a routine checkup that showed only minor issues requiring diet modification, nothing requiring special care or assistance. I composed a firm but not unkind email response. "I'm glad to hear Mom's condition isn't serious. I wish her well with the dietary changes. If you genuinely need assistance with medical care, there are professional caregivers available that you can easily afford given your retirement income and vacation budget. I remain committed to the boundaries I've set." That marked 3 months of minimal contact during which I focused on rebuilding our lives. Ethan thrived in his new school, his asthma attacks becoming less frequent in the cleaner environment. I threw myself into work, taking on an additional project that caught David's attention, and began repairing some of the professional damage from the missed meeting. More importantly, I built connections through the single-parent support group, creating a chosen family of friends who understood my situation and offered genuine support without strings attached. For the first time in years, I felt part of a community that valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. 6 months after cutting contact with my parents, I found myself in a surprisingly positive place. Work had taken an unexpected turn for the better when a team project I led generated significant new business. David, my boss, had taken notice. "Helena, the Anderson campaign metrics are impressive," he said during our weekly meeting. "The client specifically mentioned your strategic approach in their feedback." I smiled, appreciating the recognition. The team worked well together. Sarah's design concept really made the difference. "Yes, but your leadership pulled it all together," David insisted. "Which brings me to why I wanted to meet today." He explained that while the senior marketing director position was filled, they were creating a new role of associate director for client relations. "It's not as substantial as the senior director position," he admitted, "but it comes with a 15% salary increase and more authority. We'd like to offer it to you. It wasn't the 30% increase the original promotion would have provided, but it was significant enough to ease our financial situation considerably. I accepted immediately, thinking of the breathing equipment for Ethan's room that had been on my wish list for months. Ethan's health had improved dramatically in our new environment. His pediatrician noted the reduction in asthma attacks during his quarterly checkup. "Whatever changes you've made, they're working," Dr. Williams said approvingly. "His lung function tests show marked improvement." The support network I'd built through the single parents group had become invaluable. We had a rotation for emergency childcare, shared resources, and provided emotional support during difficult times. When Lisa's car broke down, we organized rides until she could afford repairs. When Mark's daughter needed surgery, we coordinated meals for his family for 2 weeks. It was the community I had always hoped my biological family would be. Then came the unexpected call from my mother, the first direct contact in half a year. Her name on my phone screen sent a jolt of anxiety through me, but I answered, curious about what had prompted her to call after months of silence. "Helena." Her voice sounded older, less certain than I remembered. "Yes, Mom, I'm here." "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her voice catching, "and I owe you an apology." Those words, so unexpected, left me momentarily speechless. "The way we treated you and Ethan was selfish," she continued when I didn't respond. "I've been seeing a therapist trying to understand why I let your father dictate our relationship with you for so long." "You're in therapy." This was unprecedented. My mother had always dismissed mental health support as unnecessary for people with proper faith. After Jacob confronted us at the family gathering, I started questioning things. "Then your Aunt Susan had some harsh words for us too." She paused. "I miss you and Ethan. I miss knowing my grandson." I remained cautious, having been manipulated by my parents' emotional appeals before. "I appreciate the apology, Mom. Truly. But what about Dad? Is he having the same realizations?" Her hesitation told me everything. "Your father is struggling with this. He still feels you should be the one to make amends, but I'm hoping he'll come around in time." "I see." The pattern was familiar, my mother making tentative steps toward reconciliation while my father remained entrenched in his position. "Would you consider allowing me to see Ethan? Maybe just for an hour in the park? I promise I won't try to find out where you live." I considered her request carefully. Despite everything, I believed that having loving grandparents could be beneficial for Ethan if the relationship could be healthy. "I need to think about it, Mom. And if we do meet, it would need to be structured with clear boundaries." "I understand," she said softly. "Whatever terms you set, I'll respect them." We ended the call with a tentative plan to speak again the following week. I wasn't ready to commit to a meeting yet, but I was open to continuing the conversation. When I shared this development with my therapist, whom I had started seeing through a program offered by my company, she advised caution, but not complete rejection. "People can change when they face consequences for their behavior," she noted. "The key is to move forward with clear boundaries and realistic expectations." After careful consideration and discussions with both my therapist and Ethan's child psychologist, I decided to allow a supervised visit. We would meet at a public park on a Sunday afternoon for 1 hour, and I would remain present the entire time. The first visit was predictably awkward. My mother arrived alone, confirming that my father was not yet willing to participate in this reconciliation attempt. She brought a small gift for Ethan, a book about astronomy that aligned with his current fascination with space. I appreciated that she had remembered this detail from our previous conversations. Ethan was initially shy, having not seen his grandmother for more than half a year, but gradually warmed up as they played on the playground equipment. I watched from a nearby bench, ready to intervene if needed, but the interaction remained positive. As the hour concluded, my mother approached me while Ethan collected rocks by the pond. "Thank you for this," she said simply. "It means more than I can express." I nodded, not yet ready to fully embrace reconciliation, but acknowledging the small step forward. "Ethan enjoys having a grandmother who's interested in his hobbies. Could we make this a regular thing? Maybe every other Sunday?" I considered the request. "We can try every other Sunday for now, same time, same place. But Mom, the boundaries are firm. This doesn't mean access to our home or life beyond these visits. She nodded, accepting the limitations. I understand. I'm just grateful for this much. Throughout this period of limited reconciliation with my mother, Ethan continued to thrive. His therapist praised his emotional intelligence and ability to adapt to our changed circumstances. Children are remarkably resilient when they feel secure in their primary relationships, she explained. You've provided that security consistently, which allows him to process other changes in healthy ways. My own journey of healing progressed in parallel. I established regular self-care routines, including yoga classes, while Ethan attended after-school activities. I started dating again cautiously, at first meeting Mark, another single parent from a different support group. Our shared experiences and understanding of the unique challenges of single parenthood created an immediate connection. As my personal life improved, I watched my parents slowly adjust to the new reality. My mother accepted the limited access with grace, never pushing for more than I was willing to give. My father, according to Jacob, struggled more with the changed dynamic. Accustomed to being the authority figure whose demands were met without question, he found my boundaries challenging to his self-image. Eventually, after 3 months of successful supervised visits with my mother, my father joined one of the park meetings. He was stiff and formal at first, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. But seeing Ethan's enthusiasm about showing him a model rocket he had built at school seemed to soften something in him. "He's got your curiosity," my father commented as we watched Ethan launch the small rocket. "Always wanting to know how things work." "He does," I agreed, sensing a potential opening for genuine connection. "He's been asking about engineering and space science lately." Our relationship remained complicated, the years of hurt and unequal treatment not erased by a few pleasant park visits. But these small interactions suggested the possibility of building something new, something healthier than what had come before. Looking back on the journey that began with their refusal to watch over my sick child, I realized how much I had grown. I had learned to establish boundaries, to build a support network based on mutual respect rather than obligation, and to model healthy relationships for my son. The painful rupture had ultimately led to positive change, not just in my relationship with my parents, but in my understanding of my own worth and what I deserved from those who claimed to love me. The most important lesson, one I hope to pass on to Ethan, was that family is defined by actions, not just blood. The people who show up when you need them, who support without demanding, who love without conditions, those are your true family, whether related by biology or choice. As I watched Ethan laugh with his newfound friends from our apartment building, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. We had weathered a difficult storm and emerged stronger, surrounded by people who valued us not for what we could provide, but simply for who we were. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took more than they gave? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complicated family dynamics and finding strength in unexpected places. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message about standing up for themselves, please share this video with them. Remember, sometimes the healthiest thing we can do for ourselves and our children is to redefine what family means on our own terms. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to create the boundaries you deserve.